Hello everybody, this is Jasmina, and in this video I am going to be talking about the 6 elegant days. They are six specific day pillars that create usually highly intelligent, multi-talented, and artistic people. So this is a really good thing to have. But there were only 6 day pillars, and it's just the day pillar out of the 60 possible pillars out there. So that's 1/10. You do have 4 chances of having a pillar such as this, but it has to be your day pillar. So this is really, really rare. Uh, Maybe not as rare as, let's say, the 3 Marvels, because that takes 3 different pillars into account, but this is quite rare. And if you have it, and you haven't had a catastrophe in your life, you probably exhibit these properties and this is the way you look at life. Of course, it depends a bit on where you are in the world and your family circumstances, how much this comes out in your early years. It often comes out in your later years if you don't have, let's say, at least upper middle class background. Now, these individuals also tend to be quite introverted, and they often are very much loners. And I have some inkling of why this might be true, and that's because they honestly would rather think and create than deal with people, because people can be quite troublesome, especially some individuals. And they have a very hard time dealing with troublesome individuals. So they much prefer to just do a lot of thinking and not bother with too many personal interactions. And this is actually one big problem that they do have, because you can do great things as an individual, but unless it is out there, it doesn't help people. So this is the 6 pillars that are involved. There's not a lot of variation here. We have 2 horses, we have 2 goats, and then we have a rat and an ox, and we only have fire, earth, and that's it. So this is really, really restricted. But, that's fine. That's just the way it is. And this has to be your day pillar, not any other pillar. And you can't find your day pillar here and find this animal, this branch someplace else. That does not work. This has to be your day pillar. And that's why it's so hard to have this. Now, I would say that becoming a bit less introverted may be the best way for people who happen to be lucky enough to have one of these to make the most use of their talents, or to make the most impact with their talents. Because a lot of these people can make great strides, but unless they can get it out to the public, it doesn't make an impact. And that is basically wasted then. It's not really wasted, but it's wasted enough that it's, at least for society, rather sad. Now, the 2 horse pillars, the fire horse and the earth horse, they have a very strong tendency towards perfectionism, but every single one of these also can easily become a perfectionist. And perfectionism, unfortunately, or perhaps not unfortunately, is it delays your ability to impact the world and to make the world a better place, because it has to be perfect, and you wait until it's perfect, and you don't get anything done that actually has an impact to help others, or at least to change the world. So this, I think, is your biggest thing, is that you have to rein in any perfectionist tendencies that you have with this. Doesn't mean you don't do a good job. It just means that you don't have to get absolutely everything 100% correct. Because everybody makes mistakes, and you shouldn't be upset with yourself if you make especially small mistakes. Big mistakes, maybe that is a different thing. But most people who have perfectionist tendencies never make big mistakes, at least most of the time. Now, there is no guarantee of success. There is no guarantee of success, but these individuals, even if they don't have success that is become wealthy or become well known, something like this, the people who know them recognize them as special people, that they are talented beyond the norm. And they may or may not revere these people, but they realize that these people have real potential. Of course, whether or not they meet that potential is a completely different thing, but they recognize these people have the potential to really impact the world. And that may only be the people in their family if they're extremely introverted. Now, each of these 6 day pillars is said to have specific personality traits, but I would also say how strongly those normal quote traits are will actually depend on the person's entire chart. It might accentuate it or it might tone it down. So I don't think you can count on this as 100%, but the tendency is there. So the fire horse. Now, if you look up the goat blade, which I just finished quite recently, this fire horse is a goat blade. It it creates very strong personality usually. And if you have a weak day master, a goat blade tends to be quite good because it helps balance that weakness. But if you are a strong day master, you can be overly strict, you can be quite perfectionist, you can be really, really rigid. And that can really hurt you in terms of dealing with other people and in terms of allowing your creativity to blossom. I guess that's the best word for it. But because they often, even if that doesn't happen, they're often quite strict. They have rules and you need to behave this way. And, they have some really often personalized issues. And they have what maybe an average person might be considered overly strict rules, but they apply them to themselves, not just to other people, but they also apply them to themselves. So at least that's balanced. But this means that they want to have a spouse who is basically perfect. And so there can be a lot of marital issues because this person who has the 6 elegant day pillar it doesn't like it when their spouse does something which their spouse doesn't think there's anything wrong with it. And so they can get really uptight and they can complain, and of course that leads to marital issues. And it can also lead to issues with their kids. I mean, the kids can feel that their parent is too strict for reasons they don't understand, and often for reasons the parents will not explain. So this is a real issue. Also, they have an increased chance of injury, and this injury can cause a certain level of disability, not necessarily tremendous disability, but enough disability that it affects their lives. And this is often because they push themselves too hard. And when they should be taking a break, they keep working and perhaps get tired or distracted and then get injured. So this is all comes from the fact that they're much more strict with themselves and with others. It all comes from that. So if you are a strong day master, you have a fire horse, a strong day master, that means you also have the goat blade. One of the biggest things is to learn to relax your rules and regulations. Learn to be less perfectionistic and be more, just more casual. Let things flow. Don't be so uptight. Now, that is my big thing, is that you really need to let go of your rules and regulations, all your things that think this is the way life should be. Be a little more relaxed. This helps you forgive others. That will help your marriage and your children's relationship with you. And it will also reduce your chances of having a disabling injury because you're able to recognize it's time to take a break. Let me think about this a bit more. Let me relax a little bit, regain some energy before I tackle it again. This is the biggest problem with the fire horse. And the fire horse is one of the ones that has more problems of the 6 elegant days than others. There's another one that's close. In fact, it's maybe even a little worse. Let's go on. So we have the fire goat. A fire goat is rooted, not super strongly rooted, but it's rooted because there's fire in the hidden stem of the goat. So this means that they can become quite wealthy with reasonable effort. They don't have to work super hard to become wealthy. They do have to work. It's just they don't have to be 100% dedicated to their job. They just happen to do the right things at the right time. And that's what this gives them. Now, there is an EG in the hidden stems of the goat for the yin fire. And this means these individuals often really love to have, really luxurious meals, often quite rich. They like fine living. And here's where they can get into trouble. For these individuals, I think they need to rein in, especially in this day and time, their desire for rich foods. And that's because today, since most people don't do physical labor for their living, these rich foods will make them become overweight or even more likely obese. And obesity is related to many, many illnesses. Obese people live less long. They suffer a lot more, health-wise, that is. And so this is a real thing. They need to make sure that they don't become too heavy because there are so many health risks involved. They also have to be a little more discerning in their purchases of, nice things, things that are not necessary, but things that they have some interest in. So these people do have maybe not a fixed tendency, but at least some of these people, especially depending on what else is in their chart, they have a tendency to spend on things they like and they at that moment, and then maybe that all fades. So they may spend a lot of money. It's easy for them to spend money, especially on artistic things or perhaps sports memorabilia, something that they focus on. And they can spend a lot of money on that. And then all that interest fades rather quickly and they kind of regret buying it. So this is where they have to focus on, is to kind of rein in their desires for things that aren't necessary for life. It doesn't mean they have to be super strict, but they just have to tone it down a bit. And then they usually have quite good lives, and they don't have too many issues with their family. So this one is better in that sense. They have a much better relationship with their family. Now the earth rat, the rat has the gui water, the yin water, as its hidden stem, and that's its only hidden stem. And this is the DW, the direct wealth for its daymaster. So this tends to lead to quite significant wealth if you're working for others. This could be not like the president of a country, but this could be one of the cabinet members or a high level position in the government or a high level position in a company that might not be like the CEO, that is, he does everything. He's the leader, but somebody just directly under the leader. And they may be more focused on like a CFO or COO, they have really good potential to become quite wealthy. They're quite intelligent. They're typically elegant. This makes them good spokespeople, especially for companies or for governments. Now, the thing is that this is this is yang earth. Earth controls the hidden stem water. So this direct wealth is a little bit tamped down because of their daymaster. But when this yin water luck pillar arrives, that reinforces this energy in the rat. And this is when they can become the wealthiest. They can have a real boost in their wealth. So when that luck pillar arrives, definitely focus on wealth. Hopefully this hasn't gone by already, but it could have. And if that's true, then you just focus on working hard. But hopefully this is in your future, and so you have some inkling of when you really need to focus. And this can be usually a rather large increase in your position, promotions, things like this. Now, this person is kind of unusual because they had the stability of the yang earth, which is like the most stable daymaster that you can have, but it also has the flexibility of the gui water, the very flexible water, gentle and nurturing and really, really good. That's in the hidden stem of the rat. And if you can balance those two, you can become very wealthy, especially when you have this luck pillar come in, and that enhances the flexibility. So if you're too rigid, that's not good. If you're too flexible, that's also not good. So there is kind of an ideal balance between these two. And it may not be easy to find or to acquire, but if you can do that, this is where these people can become very, very wealthy. Now the earth horse, this also has a goat blade. And it's a lot like the fire horse, but for reasons I cannot remember and didn't make a whole lot of sense when I read, but this is consistent in more than a few places. So I guess it's true. Even though this is earth, which is quite, well, it's the output of the horse's element, hidden stem, they tend to somehow be more hot-tempered and impatient than a fire horse. I would have expected the fire horse to be more impatient, just by logic. But sometimes logic seems to not work very well with the BaZi. At least I haven't gotten that logic worked out in my head. So basically the same things apply. They need to be a little bit less uptight so they can tone down on the rules. And also, if they can learn to moderate their temper and their impatience, if they can find a way to just let that moment, and it's usually a moment of anger, when people are hot-tempered, they often get angry, very angry, and then they calm down. If they can get over that really angry point and just say, okay, let's wait 10 minutes before I react, oftentimes things turn out to be much better. And this can be a real problem, apparently, for the fire horse, that that their temper can get them into trouble, or so ruin relationships with others that it's hard to work with them. So that I think is the biggest downfall for the earth horse. But otherwise, they have that tendency to injury. They have this trouble with marriage because they've got too many rules, and they also push themselves too hard. So all that is also true. So this one might be the most difficult one to deal with. When we come to the earth ox, they are often quite successful, especially if they're born in season or during one of what these are called various different things. They're also called the graveyard months, but they're the transition between one season and the next. And so that's the ox, the dragon, the goat, and the dog. They can become successful on their own. If they're born out of season, they tend to need the help of others, and the closer these people are to them, the better. For example, their siblings are much more likely to help than their friends, but their friends are more likely to help than, let's say, a business like forget what they call them, but venture capitalist, I guess. That's the last place to look, is a venture capitalist. They're not very likely to help, but if they don't have siblings, maybe cousins could work. If not, then really good friends could work. But it's best if these people actually have siblings, and that usually means that the family bond is also quite close, which is really quite nice. So it depends on just the season. That's it. Now, there is an issue here, though. These individuals tend to grab power rather than power. So if they grab power, they take advantage of a situation, especially if they hurt people. They're not very well liked. But they see that there's this chance and they go for it. And it's very hard for them not to go for it because that's natural for them. If they happen to grab power because of the situation, the best way for them to move forward is, and it is really to improve their safety because less people will hate them, is they have to help people once they have that power. And even if you've grabbed the power, if you make other people's lives better, they don't, they're not resentful that you grab the power. They're actually thankful. And so that will really, really help. And that will garner you a lot more respect and a lot more help, which only gets you moving even farther forward. So helping others is kind of key for these people. That is what, especially once they're able to get some power, this is very, very key. They have to help others. Otherwise, people see them as grabbing power and being greedy. So this is what they have to overcome. When it comes to the earth goat, these are deeply, deeply rooted because the goat has yin earth as its main chi. So these people are very, very rooted, and they can very easily become quite wealthy. And it is said that if they have the yin wood or either the yang or yin fire, any place else in their chart, they have a strong sense of self-awareness, so they understand themselves. They know where their weaknesses and their strengths are. And they're also usually have a good moral code, so they don't go astray. That is, astray with the law. So they do consider their actions before they take them to make sure that what they're doing is right, quote unquote right. At least it's not illegal and not immoral. Now, these individuals tend to have very successful lives. It's one of the better ones. If they can stay on the right side of the law, they tend to also have very happy lives. And of course, if they have one of these three, their ability to stay on the right side of the law, the non-illegal side of the law, they tend to have very, very nice lives. But there is that issue where if they don't have one of these, or they for some reason don't have really good morals, they often get into trouble because they get found out. It's kind of just the way it works. Because these people are supposed to be good, you know, and all elegant people are supposed to be good, but good has a lot of different meanings. So that's it. I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I hope this was informative, and I actually really hope one of you people out there actually have this. You at least know you have this potential. And if you have this potential, you may be able to really do something with it. But of course, I don't do BaZi, so you would have to get help from others, because I do say, yes, it all depends on your full chart. So I can't be sure about that, but you can actually either email me or leave a comment if you have questions. So thanks again for watching.